Welcome to Rges Algebra 1. This is Lesson 29A. We will be reviewing Section 11.7 and discussing new concepts with Section 11.8 dealing with fractional equations and extraneous solutions. Before we begin, I would like to read a scripture for you by way of encouragement, especially in these challenging days. It says, "May the Lord of peace himself give you his peace at all times and in every situation." Several things you can notice from this passage. One is that peace, profound, deep, unshakable peace, comes from the Lord. So when your heart is unsettled and aggravated and agitated, who do you run to? Run to the one who can give you his peace. Second thing you might notice is that he's willing to give you his peace. Paul is praying that he would give you his peace because he knows that he wants to give you his peace. So that teaches us, one, that it is available to us, but also that we need to ask. Go to the Lord, lean into the Lord. The peace we can find from other things, I can find a portion of peace by going out and taking a long walk in the woods, or by going out to the ocean, towards the ocean if I live near the ocean, and listening to the crash of the waves, or listening to the birds and being outside, or slowing my pace of living down. All those things provide a quantum or a portion of peace. I don't despise those things. I like those things. But perfect peace, peace that will not go away, that can stay and remain constant for us, or can certainly be given in every situation. Okay, look at this. At all times, whenever you need it, in every situation, no matter how churned up you feel, go to the Lord. Practically speaking, what I do when my spirit feels agitated is I go to the Lord and I remember two things: who he is and his great love, his goodness, his compassion, his mercies, his kindness, his power, that he's sovereign, that he's in control, that he hasn't lost his throne. Though the earth shakes, he is unmovable. All right? So if we remember that and we ask of him, because we know that his character towards us is good. So we freely ask and we will freely receive. A great promise. So I encourage you with that today. Now go ahead and get your book out if you haven't already, and get your section 11.7 out. And I am going to, you already have the answers, so I am going to just go over several examples and review them for you. And then I want you to make sure you text me if I do not go over an answer that you had a question about. So text me. This is always the rule. 11.7, text with questions. Okay, I will go over them. Nobody's texted me yet. Yeah, so I'm assuming you can figure out. I'm giving you enough examples you can figure out every problem. But if that's not the case, I expect your text. It's your responsibility to text me with additional questions. I better put my not zip code, my area code. All right, let me find some example problems for you. Now notice we see this is a fraction, which is a rational expression. It does not have an equal sign. I'm not solving it. All I'm doing is simplifying it. The only way I could simplify this, I could not cross the x's out because they're being added, right? The only time you can cancel is when you have products. So try to convert it to products. By that I mean factor the numerator. If I can if I can factor it, it means I'm changing it to two things that can be multiplied together. So let's see if binomial factoring will do it for me. If I have 11 and a 1, that will not do it for me. Okay. And this is why I forgot what the section was about, so I've got to do long division. There are a couple different choices, but if you can't factor it, go ahead and look for long division. Recall? This way. Okay, so I illustrated the work, the trickiest part of long division in algebra is not getting snagged with your signs. This is plus 5x minus 3x, leaving me with 2x, okay? So that's going to be where your problem's going to be. This is minus 11 minus 6, or minus 17. This is my remainder, must go over the divisor, and this is my whole portion answer. Okay. Now let me write another problem for you. Okay, so notice the last one. The tricky thing about number 13 is that you have to insert that missing term. Okay, number 15 would also need you to insert a missing term. Number 17 would need to insert both a 0x squared and a 0x. Number 19 is the very same process, but now you have 3 terms in the divisor. Doesn't matter. You're still only looking at the first one to decide your multiplier, and when you multiply back, you're working with 3 terms rather than 2. Same identical process all the way through 23. Now, I believe that's what you were assigned. Let me check. So I think that I've given you enough examples there. If I did not give you one, that you go over one of the ones that you missed and you could not figure out your mistake on your own, then what do you need to do? You text me the number, and I'm happy to do that problem next time. So I'm in anticipation that you will text me when you need something. All right, now let's go to the new ideas. Now, this section is on fractional equations. How do you solve fractional equations? Well, the thing you will need to do is you're going to have an equal sign. You're going to have at least one of your terms with a fraction in it. And the first thing I would recommend is to eliminate fractions. How do I eliminate the denominator? I'm going to multiply every term by the least common denominator. Now, the other thing you need to do is you need to be aware of extraneous solutions. What in the world does that mean? That means that you can never divide by 0. So when I look at a fractional equation, I need to throw away any solution that would make the equation or any term divisible by 0. Okay, so we'll look at that. So there are a certain number of solutions I might have to the equation that I have to throw away because the original equation cannot have a fraction divisible by 0. Okay, so let me give you our first example problem. I think these are easier to explain by just covering your examples. The first thing I notice is that I would like to get rid of these fractions. So with these 3 denominators, my least common denominator, you should be getting good at this, should be 10x. So if I multiply everything on the left and the right by 10x, I should get rid of all my fractions. Okay, so 2x goes into 10x 5 times 7 is 35. 5 goes into 10x 2x, 2x times 3 is 6x. 10 goes into 10x, x times 1 is x. See how simple that is? Okay, all I did was multiply out. I divided this number into that, got a multiplier, and multiplied that by that, right? 2x goes into 10x 5 times. 5 times 7 is that. 5 goes into 10x 10x 2x times, and then this is the multiplier, 3 times 2x. Okay. All right, now let's go ahead and solve it. My x's will go to the right, or you could take them to the left. It doesn't matter. Maybe I tend to take them to the left when I illustrate, so we'll go that way. We get negative 7x. Take your number to the right, negative 35, divide. Negative divided by negative is a positive. 35 divided by 7 is 5. Now, I have to check it. Is it legal? Is it legal? In other words, is it a valid answer? Well, the only thing that cannot be valid is anything that would make my denominator, a value of x that would make my denominator 0. This is the only one that has a 0 in the denominator. Okay, and so x cannot equal 0. Does that make sense to you? Because 2 times 0 is 0, and we cannot have a 0 in the denominator. So there's my qualifier. I cannot allow that, but 5 is not. I solved and got x equals 5. That's a valid answer. So that's my answer. That's my solution. Let's look at a second example. I have 3 over x minus 5 plus 3 over x plus 5 equals 7. What are my two invalid answers? Okay, when would if I have x minus 5 in the denominator, what would make that whole expression 0? X cannot equal 5 because 5 minus 5 would be 0, and here x cannot equal negative 5. So those are my things to keep in mind. Now, other than that, we're going to go ahead and solve by eliminating my denominator. What would be the least common denominator here? Well, the least common denominator would be x minus 5 times x plus 5. So I'm going to multiply everything on the left and the right by x minus 5 times x plus 5. In the first term, my x minus 5 will cancel out, and I'll get 3 times x plus 5. In my second term, my x plus 5 will cancel out, and I'll get 3, this 3, right, times x minus 5. And in my term on the right side of the equal sign, I'll get 7 times, nothing cancels because there's no fraction there. So I just have to multiply it by the entire least common denominator. Now what I'm going to do next is I'm going to distribute, but on the right side I will have to FOIL that out and then distribute the 7. So let me do all of that for you. Okay, so working that out, from here, I stopped you right here. We went ahead and distributed on the left. We FOILed this part on the right. We gathered like terms on the left. We distributed on the right. We brought these over to the left-hand side. Whoops. Okay, actually what I did was I brought this over to the right side so that I could keep the positive. Okay, so it's really 7x squared minus 6x minus 175. Okay, if you have, so you want the first term to start with positive, it's easier that way. Okay, then we went ahead and used quadratic formula, plugged everything in. At this point, grab your calculator, get these number crunches with the calculator, and then go ahead and convert this, because he's going to want you to have this. I would be very happy in a math class for you to leave that answer just like that, but he goes ahead and converts it out for you into numbers with the calculator. What are my restrictions? My restrictions down here in the orange where it cannot equal 5 or negative 5. Well, these hover around 5 and negative 5, but they do not equal it. So you're just absolutely fine. And this is your answer. Now let's look at a third example. I like to lay out my what x cannot be. X cannot be 3 because that would make my denominator 0, and my least common denominator is x minus 3. So now I'm going to multiply everything on the left and the right by x minus 3. It would cancel out here, and I'll get in the denominator, right? Just like that. And so I'll get 2x minus, the x minus 3 will cancel out, minus 6 equals 9 times x minus 3. Distribute my right-hand side and solve and compare. You go ahead and do that, and then meet you back here in just a second. Now, at this point, you have a solution, but you always must do what? Compare it to my restriction. My restriction is x cannot equal 3. So x is equals 3 is my only answer, but x cannot equal 3, so my solution is the null set. There is no solution. Okay? All right, now, if you will grab your book and turn to page 496, let's read the oral practice a little bit together. It says, give the least common denominator and the restriction. So the example, the least common denominator will be the binomial x plus 5 times the binomial x minus 2, and the restriction, x cannot equal negative 5 and x cannot equal 2. For A, the least common denominator will be x. We already have it. And x cannot equal 0. B, it will be 5 times the binomial x minus 4. And my restriction, x cannot equal 4. C, 2x is the common denominator, least common denominator, and x cannot equal 0. D, 9 times the quantity x minus 7 will be my least common denominator, and x cannot equal 7. So hopefully this is very easy for you. The least common denominator for E would be x plus 4, and x cannot equal negative 4. The least common denominator for F would be those two binomials multiplied together, x plus 3 times x minus 3, and x cannot equal negative 3 or positive 3. G, the least common denominator will be x times the quantity x minus 2, x cannot equal 0, and x cannot equal 2. H, the least common denominator will be 5 times the quantity x minus 2, x cannot equal 2. And I, so for I now, the least common denominator will be 12x, and x cannot equal 0. So if you missed any of those, if that's not obvious to you, better go back and rethink that. Now, what is your homework going to be? Well, you are going to have an attached quiz. Now that we know that we will be out for the rest of the year, we are going to give you attached as an email 2 quizzes for grades that you will have for each chapter, as well as the chapter test. Now, that will be emailed to your parents. I will email it today. And so you'll have attached quiz 17, 11.1 through 11.6. It needs to be printed out, taken in a closed book environment, folded, signed by your parents, and mailed back. Now, you don't have to mail something back every single assignment. If your parent would prefer to gather up a few assignments and mail them back together, that's fine. If they would prefer to mail them one at a time, as you have an assignment, there aren't that many assignments for math, you can do that also. Either way, okay? Either way you'd like. So let's see. So that's your quiz. That will be attached as an email. Do not email it back. Okay, I'm not interested in having you scan it and sending it back to me in an electronic form, because I do not want to. I have lots of students, not just in math, but everything else. And if we get in the habit of doing that, Mr. and Mrs. Kinzer will have to probably be Xeroxing off or printing off about 100 pages a week. And we're not interested in doing that. Okay, that's a cost. That makes the cost of our copier go up because they charge by the copy, and because of the quantity of students we have, that is something we will not accept. So even if you email it back to me, you think your mom or anybody says, well, that's the most convenient thing for me, and you email it back, we will not print it off and we will not grade it. So just be alert to that, okay? That's our standard. All right, so having said that, what is the rest of your homework? I just want to make sure we're on the same page here. 11.8, 1 through 33 odd. All right, and that's it. That's all you have for homework this week, because these problems are getting a little more challenging and a little more difficult. But if of course, I cannot reiterate enough that you need to keep up with your work. I want to give you a fourth quarter grade, and I will only do it provided you have a passing grade for both your quizzes and your test for these last, whatever they are, 4 or 5 sections. Okay. Or 4 sections, actually, and then we'll have a final. Okay, have a wonderful day. God bless you. Look for how you can not only receive his blessing, receive his peace, but be a blessing and minister peace to those around you today. Have a wonderful day.